The 9 persons about to be inducted all have had a close association with the town of Nutley through birth, long-time residency, or graduation at Nutley High School. Criteria for selection was based upon individual achievement on a statewide, national, or international level. Welcome to the Nutley Hall of Fame. And ladies and gentlemen, for the invocation by the Reverend Father Thomas Seba, pastor of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church here in Nutley.
We pause in prayer and recognize that all that God has created and sustains, all the events the Almighty guides, and all human works that are good and have a good purpose, prompt those who believe to praise and bless the Lord with hearts and voices. In humility, we recognize that the Lord is the source and origin of all blessings. We believe that the Lord blesses all of us with talents and gifts. It is the Lord who has blessed humanity with creative genius and the material benefits we have so derived. During this day of recognition, we honor in a special way gifted and talented individuals who are recognized for their significant accomplishments. Their achievements and works have benefited others, the community, and the world around us. Their achievements have also brought pride to our community. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, you made us stewards over the created world, so that in all things we may use your many gifts for the benefit of others and for your greater honor and glory. Graciously hear our prayers, that your blessing may come upon us here today, that your power will enable us to accomplish what is right and good, that you will continue to raise up those who will strive for greatness, and, inspired by the accomplishments of others, be empowered by God's grace. We pray to you, who are Lord and God, forever and ever. Amen.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's with pleasure that I introduce the members of the Nutley Hall of Fame panel of judges and administrative committee. And now the members of the administrative committee. As we begin our ceremonies this afternoon, we respectfully request that you withhold additional applause now until the formal induction has been concluded for all the candidates. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pat Rotaco, Chairman of the Inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame Committee.
Thank you. This afternoon, we reflect on the heritage of Nutley, from its earliest days as a riverside village called Franklin, to the caring and spirited community that, a century later, we cherish and proudly call home. We are about to induct into the Nutley Hall of Fame 9 men and women who not only have strengthened our community pride from within as residents of Nutley, past and present, but who have brought great pride to Nutley from without through unique accomplishment, great distinction throughout our state, our country, and indeed the world, as they have shared the caring spirit of Nutley with others and instilled a special pride back home in the hearts of our community we cherish and love. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, for induction into the Nutley Hall of Fame.
Presenting Mr. John Lloyd Huck, Chairman of the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation former president and board chairman at Merck & Company Pharmaceuticals, retired chairman and chief executive officer at the Nova Pharmaceutical Corporation, trustee emeritus at Pennsylvania State University, and former chairman of the Board of Trustees at the Morristown Memorial Hospital.
For induction into the inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame.
Presenting Mr. Thomas Infusino, former president and for the past 23 years, the chairman of the board, chief executive officer at Wakefern Foods. Mr. Infusino has been honored with the Prime Minister's Medal, the highest civilian award given by the State of Israel for humanitarianism, the Lifeline Award given by the Cooley's Anemia Foundation, and an award created in his name, the Infusino Prize in Cancer Causation and Epidemiology, sponsored by the Lautenberg Center for General and Tumor Immunology.
For induction into the inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame.
We remember Brigadier General John R. Jannarone, class valedictorian, Nutley High School, class of 1933. First in his class of 1938 at the United States Military Academy at West Point, and who, after combat in World War II, served as Dean of the Academic Board at West Point.
Standing in for the late General Jannarone is his widow, Ann Jannarone, accompanied by her son, Jack Jannarone. For induction into the inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame.
We remember Dr. Virginius D. Mattia, affectionately known as Barney Mattia, a Nutley resident who rose to the presidency of Hoffman LaRoche and, under his initiative, established the prestigious Roche Institute of Molecular Biology. Dr. Mattia also was the recipient of the B'nai B'rith Humanitarian Award.
And standing in for the late Dr. Mattia is his widow, Mrs. Alice Mattia. For induction into the inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame, Phoebe Ann Mosey, known the world over as Little Miss Sure Shot, Annie Oakley.
We remember Phoebe Ann Mosey not only as a performer with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, but for her work in promoting the rights of women to bear arms and their right to self-defense. We remember her as a volunteer worker who helped train World War I recruits in how to shoot and handle weapons safely. Phoebe Ann Mosey was also a philanthropist, performing exhibitions and benefits for the Nutley Red Cross and other organizations.
And standing in for Phoebe Ann Mosey is her grandniece and head of the Annie Oakley Foundation, Bess Edwards. For induction into the inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame.
Presenting Dr. Eileen Poiani, Nutley-born, class of 1961 valedictorian at Nutley High School, Phi Beta Kappa graduate, Douglas College, and Doctorate of Mathematics graduate, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. Dr. Poiani is a full professor and vice president of student affairs at St. Peter's College in Jersey City and was recently named by the governor to co-chair the advisory council to the New Jersey Commission on Italian and Italian-American Heritage.
For induction into the Inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame.
Presenting Martha Costira Stewart, a 1959 graduate of Nutley High School, known worldwide today as Martha, acclaimed connoisseur of taste and style, and founder and chief creative executive of Martha Stewart Living. Her first book, Entertaining, was published in 1982. She later launched the Martha Stewart Living magazine, where frequent mention is made of her roots and ties to the town of Nutley. Martha Stewart was named one of the 50 most powerful women in America by Fortune magazine.
For induction into the Inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame.
We remember Frank Stockton, one of the most renowned authors of his time, who lived on Walnut Street in a home he described as a pretty little cottage with a garden, some chickens, and a cow. Frank Stockton's short stories are anthologized and required reading for thousands of high school and college students throughout the United States. And there is a Frank Stockton room dedicated in this building, the Nutley Public Library, that also features a mural based on his book, Rudder Grange.
Standing in for the late Frank Stockton is Anthony Jannarone, president of the Nutley Public Library Board of Trustees. For induction into the Inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame.
Dr. Geerat Vermeij, one of the world's preeminent scientists in ecology, malacology, and biology. Dr. Geerat Vermeij is a 1965 graduate of Nutley High School who received a Princeton University degree in 3 years and a doctorate at Yale University. Dr. Vermeij's autobiography, Privileged Hands, describes in vivid prose how he broke out of the bonds of society as a blind person and into a world concerned with endless scientific puzzles. Dr. Vermeij is presently professor of geology at the University of California. Dr. Vermeij could not be with us today, but he has provided videotaped remarks to share with you this afternoon. Please direct your attention at this time to the television monitors.
Welcome to my cluttered office at the University of California, Davis. I am Gary Vermeij, and I'd like to begin by thanking you very much indeed for the privilege of being one of the first inductees into the Nutley Hall of Fame. I thought I would just tell you a little bit about what has driven me throughout my entire life, which is a study of living and fossil organisms and all the things that they tell us about a great many subjects. This may sound a little weird, but I began all of this as a child, and in Nutley, while I was there, we would frequently walk in the park, collect freshwater snails. I read everything I could read. All my teachers there will have remembered me for an extreme consuming curiosity about science and everything else, a desire to learn languages, all of which I have used in my career since. So this curiosity that I had, which has driven me for my entire career, remains with me, and you can see why when I pick up some of these fossils that are in front of me, which are a few million years old from Florida, because they're so beautiful. They're wonderful things to work with. They answer a lot of questions. They pose a lot of questions. It's a beautiful bivalve, for example. It's a lovely thing. There's another bivalve which is related. Nice ribs. Beautiful thing. Here's a very peculiar animal, a left-handed conus, which has a gigantic scar on it right here, which indicates that some predator millions of years ago attacked this animal unsuccessfully. We have here a predatory snail, which is still living, but this is a fossil example of it. There's a very strange fossil cowrie, very large fossil cowrie from Florida. In short, here's a wonderful thing that I love. This is another fossil snail that is no longer with us. It's an extinct species, which we don't understand very well at all. And just to change pace, here's a gigantic fossil oyster that one of my graduate students worked on from California. Its shell itself is several inches thick, and the fossil weighs 20 kilos or something. It's just enormously heavy. And there are recent shells as well. They sound like dinner plates because of the material they're made of. This is a scallop from Newfoundland, where I visited about 13 years ago. In short, curiosity, aesthetics, the beautiful questions that one can ask, all of these interests in shells have propelled me to write and teach about evolution, and more recently about economics. If you had asked some of my teachers in high school what I thought of economics, they would have all said, well, he hates it. And that is to some extent still true, but I have learned that economics is profoundly important in the study of evolution. In fact, I've just finished a long book manuscript connecting the two, which should be published next year. Behind me is a mass of books comprising my Braille library of scientific works. I've read well over 16,000 papers and books over the years, many of them in other languages, including French and German, which I took in high school at Nutley, but also in Portuguese and Spanish, Italian, Norwegian, and even in Latin once in a while. It's a library that basically forms the background for all of the research and the thinking and the writing that I do, and I do it every day. The kind of work I do is utterly curiosity driven. It's hard work, but on the other hand, it's not really work at all. It's continuing great pleasure to do research and to teach people about it and to make other people grow up into independent thinkers, scholars, and scientists. I must say that when I was in Nutley for 6 full years, from 1959 to 1965, I had some extraordinarily fine courses, particularly in high school, though I even had a few in Franklin School, which at the time was a junior high. I learned my languages extremely well there. I learned mathematics very well there. I still love mathematics and do some of it on the side. I had a wonderful chemistry teacher named David Gutknecht, who I'm sorry to say recently passed away. And I had several other wonderful people whom I learned a great deal from and whom I shall always remember. It's a pity that I can't be with you today. Unfortunately, the ceremony occurs one day before my class begins here at UC Davis. I'm teaching a course on evolution as a worldview for general education students. So I'm very sorry not to be here, but at the same time I want once again to extend my deepest appreciation for the honor you have bestowed upon me. And I wish you all very well indeed.
And standing in here for Dr. Geerat Vermeij at today's ceremonies is retired Nutley High School principal Louis Swerk. And once again, the chairman of our administrative committee, Mr. Pat Rotaco.
Thank you. Nutley is a proud town, proud of the accomplishments of our citizens, proud of our volunteer and caring spirit, and proud of those we are about to induct into the Nutley Hall of Fame. I stand up here very humble and very in awe of these people. I have been privileged to have many poems of mine published through the years, and one I saved for what we will call a rainy day that I knew one day its time would come. I would like to share that with you now. My little town. A rose of the breast of a fine virgin soil, such 'twas the fruit bore of arduous toil. For people came first, in families so sound, the passion embraced by my little town. We differ of name, not essence of thought. Afflate us in concert, bestow what is wrought. Thy limit of mark hath never known bound, so earnest a peace in my little town. Time is no stranger to my old abode. Yon demons of mammon do wish to erode. But steadfast we are, and perceived with renown, for we are the envied in my little town. Thank you.
And now to authenticate our formal induction ceremony, please welcome the Deputy Mayor of our little town, Mr. Tom Evans.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Before I start, let me first offer regrets from Mayor Scarpelli. I spoke to him before I arrived here today, and he's involved with a family activity today, and he's trying to get here. He's actually in transit, but he had suggested that since he was in trouble getting here, he thought that it might be best if I stepped in for him. So on behalf of the mayor, his regrets. But it is my privilege as the deputy mayor to welcome these fine individuals back to our town. I want to assure you that Nutley is a place that you can always call home. When I think about the town, and I've grown up in the town my whole life, I'll be 49 in February, and it's a long time to be reflecting on your time here. The town has gone through a lot of changes. And I'm sure everyone here will recognize some of those changes that we've gone through. But I wanted to assure all of you present, and to the inductees and to the members of the committees, that the spirit and the heart of our town remains very vibrant and strong. And that's something that, when you think of all the changes that we're going through, everything that's in front of us, to know that that is true about our community certainly makes me proud to have my children here and to be part of it as our legacy continues. So we are honored to have you here today. I also want to mention that each of you will receive a resolution from the state of New Jersey, sponsored by Assemblyman Scalera and Senator Sarlo, recognizing your achievement and offering congratulations from the state. So before you leave today, you will also receive this resolution. With that, I would like to ask the honorees to please rise. And now, with the authority given to me by statutes governing the office of mayor in the township of Nutley, I proclaim that it shall be through the sound of your applause that these 9 men and women shall officially be inducted into the inaugural Nutley Hall of Fame. Your applause, please.
I guess I can't get it done without these. So. We will now present the Hall of Fame Award to our new inductees. Please welcome first Mrs. Ann Jannarone, the wife of Brigadier General John R. Jannarone, and her son Jack.
have a lot of things I could say, but I think I'll make it very short. My dad was very proud to be from Nutley, New Jersey. I think this ceremony tells us that the town of Nutley, New Jersey is very proud of my father. If there's one thing I could say about my dad was that he was also very proud to be a teacher. And so I think as the students from Nutley High School, where he went to school, come into the library and maybe learn something about all of the honorees, not only today's honorees, but those in the future, that they will be inspired, as he was inspired, to go on through education to ever greater levels in their lives. On behalf of our family, then, thank you very much for this honor. It is truly a pleasure to be here today.
I would now like to call up Mrs. Alice Mattia, the wife of the late Dr. Virginius D. Mattia, for her award in honor of her husband.
That's beautiful. Well, my heartfelt thanks for this honor. My family thank you, and I know Barney, who is here in spirit, also thanks you.
We now turn to our contemporary inductees who are with us this afternoon. I apologize. We have the niece of Annie Oakley with us, and I apologize for leaving Bess out. Bess, please come up and receive the award in honor of your great aunt.
I want to thank you all. In my wildest dreams, I never imagined I would be doing what I'm doing. Nobody knew the true story. It's been so wildly exaggerated and fictionalized that it was a nightmare when I realized finally, in the late 70s really, because she was just a family member, a relative, and I had no idea there was all of this going on, except of course for that wild musical comedy that we all know about. Annie's life was not a comedy, and I finally decided that somebody had to find the true story, and I decided to do that soon after my mother died. And so it's been a daunting task to dig through century-old records to prove what I believed and some of the things that I heard when I was growing up and spent summers and holidays in my grandparents' home. And my grandpa was a crabby old man that was Annie's only brother. So I did learn a lot of things, and some of those things are still up here, and I decided that somebody should know about them. I didn't realize that Nutley cared so much, but I know she loved Nutley, or she wouldn't have been here for so long. But I very much appreciate the honor that you're showing Annie today. Thank you again.
Honor of Frank Stockton, director of the library, Friends of the Library. Tony Jannarone will accept the award in honor of Frank Stockton.
As president of the library board, I'm very honored to accept this award on behalf of Frank R. Stockton. People of my age, I don't know about younger people, all had to read The Lady or the Tiger, still wondering who it was. But there's a long association, actually, between the library and Frank Stockton. It was mentioned before. In my early days here, 31 years ago, we had our Stockton room. Originally, and quite appropriately, it was the room for young adults. And that's where the young adult collection was, and there were special cards for it, I understand. Later it became a fiction room. It still exists today, but now it's our meeting room in the back where we have a great many activities and a great many programs that I'm sure will make him very happy. I direct your attention as you leave or during the rest of the afternoon during dessert to the exhibit cabinets toward the main entrance. And one of our local residents has accumulated a great collection of Frank Stockton's books, and I think it's very interesting if you have a minute to take a look at them. So on behalf of Frank Stockton, as I say, my honor to accept this award, and a very deserving one.
Accepting the award for Dr. Geerat Vermeij is former principal of Nutley High School, Mr. Louis Zwerk.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much. You've heard comments from Dr. Vermeij, and I don't think there are any more comments necessary. I'd just like to add, I'm sure he's sincere in his appreciation in this award, and I'm sure he will enjoy it. I'd just like to add, as a former math teacher at Nutley High School, I was privileged to have 3 of the inductees in my classes. And I want to say at this time, they were potential Hall of Famers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zwerk. And now we turn to the contemporary inductees who are with us this afternoon. The first, we'd like to welcome back again up to say a few words, Mr. John Lloyd Huck.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Pat, and I thank the committee and the judges for selecting me for this honor and to be part of this very distinguished group that's here this afternoon. Nutley was a wonderful place to grow up in, and we moved here in 1932, lived up on Montclair Avenue just behind Hoffman La Roche, and then moved over to Beach Street, and I went through the school system here and then started my career here at Hoffman La Roche, where I spent 12 years. So I've had about 26 years here in Nutley, and it's been a wonderful experience for me. The class I graduated in Nutley High was a mid-year class. We graduated in January. It was a very small class. I think there were only about 90 of us. But in those years, the Nutley football team was very outstanding. And as a matter of fact, I believe it was 1939 they won the state championship and played in a after-season bowl game down in, I think it was in South Carolina or somewhere down there. And one of the members of that team, and who was a very distinguished athlete, was Mike Bertacco, who was Pat's father. I recognized the name as soon as I talked to Pat, and he was one of the most distinguished ones. So I want to thank you very much for this honor, and it's a delight to be here with all of you.
Yeah. It's easy for you to say. You can't even find your glasses sometimes. I need glasses to find my glasses. Next, I'd like to call up Mr. Thomas Infusino.
Thank you, Pat. I'd like to thank the judges and the committee for their selection of bestowing this honor on me. You know, I've been in town 51 years. And during this period, I've enjoyed 2 very, very important partnerships. I don't make partnerships very often. One, I've been married to Estelle for 55 years, and I don't think I'd be standing here if it were not for her. And the other is I've been associated with the Locurcio family for 51 years that I've been here. In fact, at Vince's passing last year, it was 50 years of a partnership that was unbelievable. It's a great town. I've enjoyed being here, meeting a lot of people, being friends, and I've enjoyed doing business. I do a lot of things which involve Wakefern, which take me out of this town, but there's not a place like Nutley that I've run across in all my travels. Thank you very much.
Next, Dr. Eileen Poiani.
Thank you. Mr. Attacco and the Hall of Fame committee, Mrs. Bedford and the judges panel, Mr. Jannarone, and so many wonderful distinguished guests. I'm proud to be from Nutley. I cannot thank you enough for the signal honor of being a charter member of this Hall of Fame. I am profoundly grateful and extremely honored and elated to be here. You know, once upon a time, that's how happy stories start, and so many of those stories were read right here in this library. And mine is very, very happy, and I assure you it will be short. Once upon a time, a young teenager named Eileen, born and bred in Nutley, decided to start her own water taxi. Using her grandfather's canoe, she ferried commuters across the Morris Canal for a nickel to shorten their way to the bus. She graduated from Nutley High School in 1931, went on to be a legal secretary, the original Eileen Poiani. And you know, once upon a time, a young man from Newark named Hugo strapped kerosene cans on his back to learn to swim. He entered the aviation industry and moved to Nutley when he married Eileen. I would not be here today if it wasn't for the values and love of Hugo and Eileen, my wonderful parents. I tell you, God has been so very good to me. They emphasized education and service, and you know, when I went to Washington School, the legendary Miss Troy and Mr. Gilligan steeped me with knowledge and discipline. I used to talk a lot in class. Maybe that was the curiosity that wonderful Dr. Vermeij referred to. I mastered the use of 2 pencils at one time to write "I will not talk in class" 400 times. And the teachers at Washington armed me well as I strolled through Yannicol Park to get to Nutley Junior and Senior High Schools. My 7th grade science teacher said, "You'll be using computers as naturally as you use a phone." Wow, those Nutley High School teachers really know the future. I enjoyed belonging to the International Relations Club, where even before the word diversity became a term and before it was coined, I learned to appreciate others and have had the pleasure of continuing that diversity involvement with the NCCJ. I thank all my Nutley teachers who inspired me, who challenged me, and Mr. Work, you lit my mathematical fire. I cannot help but mention that Holy Family Church was a pivotal part of my life as well. It had the most outstanding CYO in the country, the state. We'll claim the country. I learned a lot of leadership skills there, and I'm happy that Holy Family continues to support Nutley's youth. Once upon a time, another waterway in my life, the banks of the old Raritan. When society said women can't, Douglas College said women can, and we did. And you can tell, Annie, Martha, and I certainly have wonderful roots here in town. Rutgers sharpened my commitment to mathematics, and my passion for teaching grew exponentially. But then it was on to the left bank of the Hudson, to St. Peter's College, where those Jesuits were tremendous mentors. Father Degnan, I know, is here, the 4 presidents for whom I worked, the mathematics colleagues who were wonderful, and the student affairs team that cannot be beat. But through all of this, Nutley was my home, still is. I'm a 3rd-generation child of Nutley. I've blazed a few trails, and I've broken a few ceilings because of the support and the mentorship that I've had. But what makes any success I've had special is that my success relies entirely on helping students and others shape their success stories. Congratulations to my fellow honorees who have blazed very interesting trails. I'm honored to be among you. We represent what the young people of Nutley can do and can become. Our roots are as deep as the beautiful trees in this town, and they can spread as far and wide, worldwide, and even influence, hopefully, many others to serve the greater good. There is a famous adage that says, fame is for a moment. I am relishing this moment with so many of you, my family, my friends, my neighbors and colleagues. I cannot thank you enough for your presence. And I thank you, Nutley, for turning my once upon a time story into a once upon a time, once upon a lifetime experience. Thank you so very much.
Wonderful. Let's all welcome Martha Costyra Stewart.
I'd like to thank everyone on the nominating committee, the judges, Ruth Bedford, and everyone on the investigative committee. I'd just like to know what you were investigating, but for inducting me. Into my hometown Hall of Fame. Special thanks to Pat Rotaco. Who knew he was such a fine poet? Well, we've been dealing with the nitty-gritty with Pat, and never once did he whisper a word of poetry, but how wonderful. And he worked so long and so hard with the rest of the committee to make a directive of the 100th anniversary of Nutley come true, and that is the establishment of this Hall of Fame. And it is with great pleasure that I accept this honor. Growing up in Nutley was for me probably one of the most pleasant and enlightening experiences of my life. One of 6 children of Edward and Martha Costyra, and my mother is sitting in the front row here. Many of you know Martha, Big Martha. We lived in a 3-bedroom house on a quiet street, Elm Place, just around the corner from a very nice school, Yanticos School. I just took a little ride down memory lane on my way here, and it has changed so little and so much. It is still the pristine, beautiful town that it was when I was growing up. I remembered everyone's house. I remembered who lived in every house. My mother, I don't know if she was surprised or not, probably not, because I use my fond memories of Nutley often in recalling childhood memories in my column in the back of my magazine, Martha Stewart Living. And I try to get it right. Sometimes my memory differs slightly from that of my brothers and sisters, and I usually call them at 7 o'clock in the morning when I'm writing the column. I have to wait till 7 because they don't get up quite as early as I, but they're always willing to offer their memories back to me, and I always call Mom, and she says, how do I remember? How can I remember all that stuff? But when I want to find out the price of that original television from Emerson Brothers, Mom has the receipts in her file. I just have to call her up and get her to open the file. And she has one little ledger book. If you talk about being a fine accountant and a fine bookkeeper, Mom, the teacher, has this little ledger book, and she can look up and tell you pretty much everything that was purchased by the Costyra family while they lived in Nutley. And it's kind of fun to have, but it's all in one book. For me, boy, you'd have to look in about 33 different big, huge filing cabinets. And not that I'm a spendthrift, but it's really amazing. And this is before computers. Now we're getting Mom on email. She's been on email for a couple of years, but she's doing very well. And Mother, happy 89th birthday, which she just celebrated this past week. She doesn't want anybody to know, but it's on national television. But there's a famous rule in a place called Stu Leonard's in Norwalk, Connecticut. It's a place where everybody shops for their milk. It's a big dairy store. And as you walk into the store, on a great big rock, it says, rule number 1, the customer is always right. Rule number 2, if the customer is wrong, see rule number 1. In our family, that rule was already made pertaining to teachers. We were 6 kids, rambunctious and smart and very curious. And we would come home, complaining about so-and-so. Oh, mother, that teacher. My mother would say, rule number 1, the teacher is always right. And rule number 2, if the teacher is wrong, see rule number 1. And we learned so much about respect for teachers, for mentors, for parents, for adults as we were growing up. And it was astonishing to me to see how that has sometimes changed. And I really work very hard against that kind of thing. Teachers should be celebrated. I asked my mom how much she made as a teacher. Her first job at St. Mary's School. I don't remember what grade you were teaching, 6th grade there too? 6th grade. She made, as a teacher, her first year, $3,000. And in 1982, when she retired from the Nutley Public School, she was making $17,000, which was the top of the scale. And I think that so much has changed, helping build up a larger teacher population in America, because finally we have realized the value of teachers more and more and more. But it's so nice to see one of my teachers here. I'm the 3rd of the students of Mr. Zwerg. I was the only girl in his trigonometry class. Do you remember that? The only, and some of my fellow students, Mike Geltrude was in my class, and Sandy Stoddard was in my class, and I think, were you in my class too, Ernie? Yes, he was in our class. Ernie Dion was here. And we all studied really hard under Mr. Zwerg. I wanted to mention some of the other teachers that made such a big difference to me. In high school. I remember all my other teachers too. I have all my report cards. I look at them, and Miss Wire even came on my television show. She was my 3rd grade teacher, and she has passed away, but she came on the show because she meant so much to me. She taught me so much the value of being a good teacher, which is what I consider myself. My career has been to teach. Mrs. Hoffer, Mr. Fritsch, Mrs. Pointer, Mr. Deach, Mr. Harrell, Mr. Huntoon. How could we forget Mr. Huntoon? Mr. Shergalis, Mr. Verschow, and Guy Teen. He was my Latin teacher. I studied with him and went to Columbia University to take the Latin tests. Miss Gerdnick, Miss Hoyer, Mr. Suffern, who we all adored, Mr. Lombardi, and I think, Mr. Gutnick, chemistry. He did not tell me not to become a chemist. I did miserably in freshman chemistry, not in laboratory, but in theory. So he actually got one of his students to be another honoree today, which is fantastic. And Mr. Pecoraro and all of my other principals and teachers all meant so much to me. I think about them often when I think about Nutley. And I just thought, just really quick, because it'll just get your mind going about Nutley. I know you celebrated your 100th anniversary and probably learned a lot about the history of Nutley, but for those of you who don't, in my way, we did a lot of research in the last few weeks about Nutley, just trying to remember. And I sent my assistant over to Nutley last Monday. She worked with several people. Mrs. Verity helped her a lot, and the librarians here helped her a lot. But just get some of the answers to some of my questions. And because I was just writing a column about what classes were open to girls and which weren't. And when I was in the 8th grade, mechanical drawing was not a course available to girls. For some reason, in 9th grade it was. And we learned how to draw. The first thing we had to draw was a gun. And the teachers, I said, why a gun? Why do we have to draw a gun? He said, when you see how the mechanics of a gun and how complicated it is and how complicated it is to make a gun, you will learn then how to understand so many other things, and how right he was. And led me to a lot of other things. I love architectural drawing, but that was a great class, mechanical drawing. But I couldn't take shop, I couldn't take auto shop, I couldn't take wood shop, and I had to learn that at home from Dad. Did you know that homemaking was only for girls? In 1958, the entire school population of Nutley Public Schools was 4,720, a lot of kids. That the Women's Club on Chestnut Street, which you can see from this building, was built in 1702 by Jacob Vreeland. What a beautiful brownstone house that is, made from the local sandstone. I just think it's the most beautiful place. And I remember taking my flower arrangements there to the Women's Club. It became the home of the Women's Club. Is it still the home of the Women's Club? Yes. And I remember taking my flower arrangements there and trying to compete with the garden clubbers. Only once did I win a ribbon. In 1796, Kingsland Manor was built. And that manor, I felt so bad when I walked through that house, knowing that it had been built partially by slaves, that there are actually slaves in Westport until 1832, I think it was. There were slave quarters, a slave prison in that house. And I'm very happy to see that it has been restored and that it did become part of the the Underground Railroad for the expeditious steering out of slaves from the South. I just drove on the street where Fred Frobose had his dancing class. How many of you danced with Fred Frobose? Moore's Drugstore is now a house, but it was the best drugstore with the best vanilla ice cream sodas, and they were only like 15 cents. There was Charlie's and there was Sammy's, and there are so many other things in Nutley that, the first telephone was installed in 1887. How many of you remember your first Nutley telephone number? Mine was North 75792, and it was a party line. We had one phone in the kitchen, so when it rang, when you were up in bed, you had to run down the stairs, tripping down to answer the phone, and then it would ring for your party lines, too, because there were 4 other parties on the line. We used to love to listen to the party line. And that electric lights were first turned on in Nutley in 1893, and that Jannarone School was built in 1902. It is a beautiful piece of architecture. Take a look at it again. I just looked at it today. I couldn't believe how beautiful a building it was. And in 1938, saw the adoption of the police radio system, and that the Cerami Dairy burned down in the summer of 1953, killing many of the cows and severely burning lots of them. And my dad worked for Pfizer at the time, and he took over so many boxes of antibiotic ointments and things to help heal the burns on the cows. I went over with him. It was the most horrible, that was the most disastrous thing that I remember in Nutley. And that, here's something interesting, that during the early 50s, Marjorie Morningstar by Herman Wouk and On the Beach by Neville Shute were placed with other books in the off-limit room at the library. I don't see an off-limits room around in this library right now, and I wonder if there is one, but I had special permission because I read so many books. One thing that my parents allowed us, and it actually really kind of encouraged and pushed us out the door, was to go to the library as many times a week as we wanted to. And I would come here, and because I read so many books and passed the test in the children's room, I got into the Stockton room, and then from the Stockton room I got into the adult library. And there were levels at that time. Now I understand there are no levels. But I got to read those books before they were put in that room. And but in 1958, The Naked and the Dead by Norman Mailer and From Here to Eternity were actually removed from circulation until a public uproar put them right back in the library. I was happy to see that too. So there's many, many, many wonderful things and many curious things and many amazing things that go on in a town like Nutley. And that Nutley has changed so little and changed so much, evolved so beautifully, and yet retains that character that I recall so well as a young girl. Makes me so proud to have been brought up here, gone to school here, learned so much of what I learned here, and learned so much of how to learn about everything else I had to learn about in my life. Thank you, Nutley. Thank you so much for giving me this honor.
A few items of interest. There will be an historical account, record of the Nutley Hall of Fame will be contained in an engraved bound volume that will be on display in the Nutley Public Library. The bound volume will be signed by all those inducted into the Nutley Hall of Fame, and the bound volume will contain biographical background information of all the Hall of Fame inductees. The names, in case you people have not visited downstairs, please view the tree, which is the tree of Nutley now, with the gold plates of all the inaugural inductees down by the elevator, and that will be a permanent fixture and will grow as more inductees through the ensuing years. Father Seba will now close with our formal program and benediction. But one last thing, a rousing applause for the class of 2003.
Lord our God, we are grateful for this day and for the accomplishments of the inductees whom we honor today. May their accomplishments inspire us and our young people to continue forth onto the road that will lead them to success in their own lives. May their success also benefit our society and our world, and may this community always be proud of them. We ask this, as all things, through our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Yes, ma'am.